talk more about this with public governance analyst Zwelinzima Ndevu joining us tonight. A very good evening to you, sir. Grateful for your time. So let's speak to you first about the comments made by Pravin Gordhan in that interview exclusively with our Gordhan Whittles. He basically says that there was a conversation about certain individuals. He says André de Ruyter alluded to their involvement in corruption, but as minister, he simply does not have enough evidence or enough to go on to actually approach police in pursuit of perhaps a criminal investigation. Does that leave it there as far as Gordhan's responsibility in this matter?
Good evening, Tebegile. Good evening to your listeners. I think Gordhan, as a minister, as a public figure who's responsible for state-owned entities, the fact that he doesn't have sufficient evidence cannot assume that there is nothing to investigate. It would be responsible of him to, therefore, with the information that he has been given by the raters, should have further investigated and tried to find out if there was any shade of truth in what was reported to him. So it can't be that when there is this serious allegation leveled against certain individuals and you just sit because you think that at your disposal you don't have sufficient evidence without looking for that evidence. It obviously cannot come to you. So there was a responsibility for Minister Gordhan to actually investigate these allegations and satisfy himself that there is nothing untoward in these allegations that have been given to him. And I think that is unfortunate that he felt that there was no need to do that.
And what does the minister's handling of those conversations or the allegations by André de Ruyter and what he said in that interview with Newzroom Afrika today do to the current government's, shall we say, messaging that it's basically a revived, a renewed ANC government that is anti-corruption and will act against corruption at all times?
I think his response is what we have heard before from the ANC government. But what one would have expected is for Minister Gordhan to then approach Minister Cele and other ministers who deal with state, with legal matters within the state, to actually inform them of these allegations that have been made by directors. And as a collective, as a security cluster, they then sit down and look at whether there are merits to this allegation or not. Saying you are dealing with corruption only in words and not acting is tantamount to doing nothing. So we need to see actions, and we need to be able to see evidence of people trying to at least investigate this, and they find that there was sufficient information to go any further.
What about de Ruyter himself? There are these growing calls for him to basically appear before Parliament, where MPs would try to push to get names of specific individuals who were involved in alleged corruption at Eskom. He left that detail out when he gave the interview in the last few days. What needs to happen with him now?
Yes, for me what is surprising is that a person whose responsibility is to take charge and turn around a state-owned entity such as Eskom, which affects its service delivery processes, affects ordinary South Africans. You would have expected in the annual reports at least to have mention of these issues. And certainly, Mr. de Ruyter should have gone to the police, reported this matter, and if he has not done that, or if there was no evidence that he has given to them that he had at his disposal at the time, then we would say today when we're sitting here, then he should also be charged. So he should also be prosecuted for non-action, because all of us has a responsibility if we see any criminal activity to report that to the police and to ensure that we follow up on what we have reported on. So if he has not done that.
How sympathetic are you, Mr. Ndevu, to those who sympathize with André de Ruyter, say, well, he went into a situation where this was clearly a corrupt entity, rotten to the core. There were cartels. There were politicians who were basically using Eskom as their feeding trough, and he basically couldn't do anything about the situation.
When Mr. de Ruyter took over Eskom, he knew the challenge. He knew the amount of task that he need to deal with at Eskom. So these issues of corruption are not issues that he found out when he got inside. He knew about them. They were in the public domain, that there are certain individuals, there are certain companies that are milking Eskom dry. So he was aware of that. In his first interview that he did, he tried to do a diagnosis of the root of the problem within Eskom. So he was aware of it. I think what is unfortunate with him is that he did not take the country in his confidence in informing them that these challenges were beyond, or the environment was not allowing him a chance to deal with some of these challenges. And only now at the end, he is coming up with all these issues. So as a result of that, I think when you know the task and you go to a particular environment, when you know what is expected of you and not able to deliver as expected, we can be expected to sympathize with him. But we need to ensure that the institution is stronger going forward, and rather than putting individuals that are not going to be able to turn around the institution.
Back to the interview with Minister Pravin Gordhan today, one of the other things that Gordhan asked him about was these cartels. André de Ruyter alluded to the involvement of cartels in the provision of coal, or the coal supply contract at Eskom. He says that it's a massive business, dangerous business. In fact, he went as far as saying that people are assassinated almost weekly in Mpumalanga linked to some of these contracts. Yet the minister today said to Gordhan that he did not have the finer knowledge, finer detail around the operations of cartels within the Eskom business chain. Should he not have been fully appraised of that, given that he's basically responsible for public enterprises?
I find it difficult to believe the minister that he really did not know, because ordinary South Africans read about it on a daily basis, these cartels. We might not know the extent of the turf wars that happens in Mpumalanga, because we're not closer to the situation. But certainly we are aware of what is happening in that part of the world. And the minister, in the position that he is, having regularly interacted with not Mr. de Ruyter only, with other stakeholders within the sector, he should have been aware of those issues, and I think he is aware of those issues. But what is questionable is why there is no willingness to deal with some of those issues, and perhaps that's a question that Mr. Gordhan must answer.
And for those now going to be approached, or who are going to put themselves forward to become the Eskom CEO, what kind of entity do you think they'll be inheriting?
I think they will be inheriting a broken entity. They will be inheriting an entity that is dysfunctional, and this is not something new, really. We need somebody who is going to have a strong character, somebody who is going to have a strong skin, somebody who is going to ensure that he strengthens the institution further, and somebody who would be would have zero tolerance approach to dealing with corruption in Eskom. Perhaps we need to have an overhaul of the whole system within Eskom and the people that are there.
Public governance expert Zwelinzima Ndevu, good to speak to you, sir. Thank you very much for your time tonight.